Okay, so I'm going to pull my notes up here. All right. Hey, so hi everybody. This is a discussion, the very first one on the User Defenders Book Club, aka UD Book Club, that is a part of the UD community, aka User Defenders community. So I'm really grateful to have Charles Hall, Ross Beitzel, if I said that right. I probably butchered that, Ross. You know what I want to do? I want to have you guys, I want to have everybody here, I want to have us go and introduce ourselves, if that's cool, and kind of tell us your name, where you are, and your favorite superhero and why. Ready? Charles, go.
I'm Charles Hall. I'm a senior UX architect at MRM McCann in Detroit. I'm a little older than I look. I've been in the industry for about 30 years, having worn many hats along the way. I should have been prepared for the superhero question, but I'm not.
I kind of sprung that one. That's okay. You get a pass. All right. Let's see. I think we lost Ross. Did we? Oh, no, we didn't. Ross, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. My name is Ross Beitzel. I'm an aspiring UX person. I guess really want to get into UX research and a little bit more of the design as well. But I've been listening to the podcast for a long time, and I'm happy to be part of the book club. And so my favorite superhero is Michelangelo from the Ninja Turtles, because my favorite food is pizza, and he's the party dude. And I like to be a party dude as well. So I look up to Michelangelo in a lot of different ways.
Oh, I love that. That's so good. That was unexpected, man. Muriel, hello.
Hi, I'm Muriel. I'm in New York. I guess I'm an aspiring UX person too. I'm currently in an internship. And my favorite superhero, can I have more than one?
Sure you can.
Because growing up, I loved watching Batman and having a Batgirl from the 60s pop up. So she was my favorite with the motorcycle, but also Princess Leia from Star Wars and Wonder Woman. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I guess I wish I had superpowers, I guess. Yeah.
What superpower would you most want?
To fly.
Flight, yeah. That's probably one of the, I agree with that. I would love to be able to fly.
Yeah.
Let's see. And we have, last but not least, Emiliano Gonzalez. Emiliano. Emilio might win for region, furthest distance.
Yeah. So I'm talking from Uruguay. I studied industrial design, but have always worked on the digital world. So right now I'm working as a product designer, but I've done everything. And I started studying and working a lot in user experience and focusing more on UX processes in the last 5 years or so. And so that's it.
Nice. Do you have a favorite superhero by chance?
Favorite superhero. So I always liked, like from when I was a kid, Superman, but I'm not a comics guy or anything. So let's say that's my choice.
Okay, very good. So we all read Mismatch, and I got to be honest with you, I have probably about 15 pages left. I was sitting here for, last hour, just really consuming, trying to get to the very end, and I probably have a few more pages left. But don't tell me how it ends. No, I'm just kidding. You get to, I think this is one of the books that you kind of want to know how it ends, because this was such an important book. I think this may actually be the most important book on design I have ever read, period. I like from the very first page, like the words were just jumping off the page into my mind, into my heart, and really doing something to me as a designer that no other book has really done. I'm being honest here. And this is just a very important book. Designers listening to this or watching this after the fact, if you haven't read it yet, highly recommend it. but yeah, there's so much to kind of talk about. I kind of want to jump right into this, but the book was called Mismatch: How Inclusion Shapes Design by Kat Holmes, who is really, I think, one of the figureheads, along with John Maeda, of this important movement in the field of design about inclusionary design, and there's some differences too, and I want to get into that because and this is another thing in the book really enlightened me too, is that there's inclusive design, there's universal design, and accessibility design. And it's like, I think on the surface, it might be easy to go, well, those all kind of sound the same to me, but there are some distinct differences. And I do want to kind of get into that eventually. But I really loved Kat's definition of inclusive design when she was at Microsoft, really pioneering a lot of this stuff over there. And look at what Microsoft is doing. I think she was a big catalyst to a lot of the work they're doing around gaming and so many other things in inclusive design. But her definition was really interesting. I liked it a lot. She said it's a methodology that enables and draws on a full range of human diversity. Most important, this means including and learning from people with a full range of perspectives. So I really like that a lot. I want to jump out the gate here though, and just say, and this is kind of my one sort of criticism of the book. And ironically, it had to do with the actual physical book. The physical book was a mismatch for me. I wear glasses now.
Yeah.
The text was so small, I could hardly even read some of it with my glasses.
Yeah, I was going to make the same comment.
A criticism I had ironically, the book was a mismatch for me physically, the physical book. So if you can get past that, and if you can, if you wear glasses, I was able to read. It was just super challenging, especially when you kind of get into, there's like her main narrative, which was just about right as the smallest amount of text I could actually physically see. And then there's like kind of subtext speaking, and then like subtext, and that was like, oh my gosh, that was probably a 6-point type in the book. So I gotta say, like Kat or anybody listening, publisher, when you reprint these, please raise the text up a little bit. Anybody else have thoughts on that?
Yeah, and publish it as an ebook.
As an ebook. Good.
Right.
Good.
I got the Kindle version, so did not experience that, but that should definitely be an improvement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
so that's my one criticism that I have of the book, and it's really just that it was ironically a big mismatch for me.
So I want to build off of your opening of it, which is I too have not actually finished reading the entire book because I have a different habit of how I consume a book. So first, I was super familiar with it in the first place because I've read all of her articles and interviews, and I've seen her speak on the topic. Actually, the day the book was released, she was in Detroit doing a symposium on it because Detroit has a big chapter in the origin story of this book. When I first got a hold of it, I do what I normally do with a book and sort of power skim it. So I got the gist of it. And then I go back and read the whole thing, and I haven't finished that. But just as important as the book is paying attention to the community that she's established and following what everyone is doing in the space as a result of it, and not just the book itself.
I like that. Yeah, I fully agree. I really love how the book starts off with the playground analogy. And I think that was really a lot of the inspiration for her kind of really pursuing this, was having a conversation. I think her name was Susan Goltz, who was really one of the pioneers of inclusive architecture design, especially as it relates to play and with children and the playgrounds. And a lot of it was through observation, like watching kids play. And kids can be really mean. I mean, it's just, they may not know how mean they're being, and they probably don't sometimes. But I mean, I think we can all kind of reflect back to at least one memory of maybe on the playground or in class where we asked the question, can I play? In some form or another. And one of the kids or more of the kids said, no, you can't play because blah, 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 you're the last one picked for the kickball team or things like that. And, it hurts. It truly does hurt. And I think that I just love how she took that that analogy and was able to bring this really important subject matter into the realm of design. I think it's so easy for us to, as designers, unfortunately, and sometimes it's because we are answering to leadership that doesn't value inclusive design as much, but it can be easy for us to kind of, to just sort of dismiss the people that really need our designs that we're excluding from it. So I felt like that was just such a great start. And there was one question that I was thinking about. I love for that includes simple is the fastest way to undermine its progress. Why is that? Do you all have thoughts on why that might be?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the minute that you tell someone that there is a moral or ethical thing that they're not doing, they basically get defensive, right? So you want to use the carrot approach versus the stick approach, right? So if you come along and say, you need to do this because it's morally the right thing to do, that basically says you're not moral currently. So
that's interesting. And I think it also maybe implies that this practice is an edge case, right? It's like, this is the right thing to do. No, this is the thing that we should do. Does that resonate with anybody else?
I wouldn't characterize it as such, as the thing to do, because then that sort of implies that everything else isn't a thing to do. I think going back to her definition, I think she nails it in the best way possible. So lots of people over the last 20 years or so have come up with inclusive design definitions and principles, and they're all good. But every single one of them prior to Kat's work has talked about designing for people, taking the considerations of people into your design process. And all of that misses the boat of designing with. The whole point of inclusion is to bring them into the process, not design for them. And that distinction is key in this book and in this work.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was definitely one of those things that stood out to me a lot, is the whole principle of designing with versus designing for. I think that's how it's been really for a long time. I mean, I remember I started doing websites in the 90s, and really a lot of it was a lot of exploratory stuff. We didn't know that much yet. The technology hadn't advanced that much yet. So it was easier to just kind of like learn some of the stuff we needed to learn at the time. But there was not a lot of consideration for, especially back then, in the area of building websites and thinking about people with disabilities. Like, I don't remember this really being that important, sadly, at the time. But that whole perspective now of designing with is like, there's so many benefits to that, like, versus designing for. It's like designing for is we put on this ability bias. And that was a really big learning for me, is thinking about like my ability bias. And we all have it. I mean, and we're all at different stages of life. We all have different abilities and disabilities. And the reality is, and exactly, that's exactly what I was going to say. We are all, if we are able, quote unquote, we're all temporarily able, because entropy has it and nature has it that we will actually start to decline in our abilities. Like, I put glasses on for the very first time about 4 months ago, and I'm 43 years old. My optometrist said, "Hey, congratulations, you beat the odds by 1 year." Everybody by the age of 42 statistically will need glasses for reading, at least. So, or some type of aid. So we're all just temporarily abled, and that's a fact. So I really like that idea of designing with. I think one of the areas that was sort of a challenge for me. And it's really just because this is so nascent for me. This is such a new kind of idea for me. And it was just about like finding people that we can kind of, how do we seek out and find the quote unquote not normal people, or as Kat puts it in the book also, exclusion experts. How do we find people? Like maybe they're people with disabilities, or maybe they're just people who are able in ways that we are, but they're just not like us. Like, how do we find those people in our research? Do you all have any thoughts or ideas on how to do this?
I can tell you what hers is, because I asked her that when she spoke in Detroit.
Oh, great.
So I had the exact same question. So if the whole goal is to shift from designing for to designing with, how do you find who to design with, right? So I work at a very large agency, and for those of you that in the U.S. That work for a company, you know that you can't ask. It's actually illegal to ask someone if they have a disability. So how do you find out? How do you find the community? How do you find a tribe? How do you find participants to join the design process if you can't ask? So her answer was throw out the bat signal. You basically bring them to you by being visible yourself. You put out into the universe what you're trying to do, and people will come to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's definitely viability to that. I've been reading, or actually just read a book called Think and Grow Rich, which was written by Napoleon Hill in like the 1930s or something. He probably started the manuscript even well before that. So really the basic principle of the book is it applies to the law of attraction. It's really true. And there's actual, like, it's just a fact that we really attract the things that we put out into the world. We really do. And that's people, that's community, that's anything, that's interests, that's so like, I do believe that. It may sound a little woo woo, you know, like, oh, just put out the bat signal and people will come, like build it and they will come kind of thing. But I really believe that if that becomes a primary driver behind your why as a designer, I really think that you're gonna make that a desire, and you will actually find what you're looking for. I do believe in the law of attraction highly.
It doesn't mean it's easy, right? So
Of course.
there are people standing by waiting to participate that have been traditionally excluded, and you will get some of those people. But if you have been if you've lived a significant portion of your life feeling excluded, you're also going to be in the category of being timid or have reservations about trying to be included again, because you know historically any attempt has failed. So the signal that you send out has to be very welcoming to that sort of person that has felt historically excluded.
I like that. Yeah, and the other thing too is we have this wonderful thing called the internet, which is like a very, very loud amplifier, right? And a lot of the world happens to be connected through this medium. So I think we can, if we're really truly looking for something or for someone, I think the internet can help us do that, help us find that person or those groups of people. And if we can't find them directly, I bet you somebody else knows somebody who knows somebody, you know, that kind of thing, like the whole 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever it is.
Right.
Muriel, what do you think?
I'll just add real quick, the other factor to consider when you are trying to recruit participants to become included in your process is 75% of disability is invisible. So it's not like you can walk up to someone because they're in a wheelchair and know that that they're going to make your team more inclusive, because the kinds of things that need to be represented aren't visible to us. And people tend to also not self-identify these things.
Yeah, that's I agree. It's unfortunate, like I was thinking about this too. Empathy, like I really believe empathy is at the heart of this book. And I know that some would say it's an overused buzzword in our field, but I'll never get tired of it. I'll never personally get tired of it, because I think once we kind of categorize something as important as empathy, I think we start to kind of lose sight of the importance of designing for other people that aren't like us. And so like I really feel like this is rooted in empathy. And I think one of the ahas I had while reading this book was how unfortunate it is that sometimes we have to go through a personal experience, like maybe traumatic or tragic or disabling experience, before our empathy can become like a real force. And I can tell a testimonial, like a year ago, I slipped on ice next door, and I tore my cartilage in my ankle, and I actually nearly tore the ligament off in my ankle. And so I immediately experienced disability. I immediately was thrust into that actual empathy of what others felt. I mean, of course, I had to kind of live with it for a little while before I really felt the pain of it. I'm big on fitness. I like to walk on my treadmill in the mornings. It really helps my mood. I have a chronic spine challenge, scoliosis, minor scoliosis, 100% loss of curve in the neck, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really important for me to stay active and to keep moving. Like I almost have to. I want to walk my daughters down the aisle. That's a goal. That's a goal of mine. I have, my youngest is, she's 3. She just turned 3. And I want to be able to do that. So I have a lot of motivation, right? All of a sudden this injury puts me on my butt for 6 months nearly. Like, I mean, I had crutches, but still, like I was mostly sitting in a chair, and I started to experience a lot of different things that I normally would not have experienced. Like even trying to go to a bathroom on crutches. Like there's some bathroom doors that are just way too heavy. And I actually was able to experience that firsthand. I had the door, it nearly knocked me down because it was so heavy. And so there's things like that. And she even touches on a bathroom analogy of people that don't have arms and can't reach to flush the button. They can't hit the flush button, things like that. And so there's just so many things to consider. But that was just kind of a big aha for me. Having, experienced this disabled state for a while, and realizing how much it changed me and how much it changed my mood. And I was depressed. I'm not going to lie. I suffered depression for a good 3 months. And my wife can tell you, you could just ask her, it comes out in how you treat other people and how you talk to other people. So for me, like that was a big eye-opening experience. But, how has this book helped you all to maybe suspend your ability bias and put yourself more in the shoes of others who aren't like you?
Well, I think kind of like you were saying, in reading the book, now every time I go to the bathroom, I see the waving feature on top, which I really hadn't noticed before. Now I'm attuned to that, and I see that, and so that's why I think it's so important for designers to be open to experiences and understanding ourselves and being open to experience new things, because I think empathy begets more empathy. Because with you had that injury, and so you understand firsthand what it's like to have that injury, but now you're thinking about all the other ways that your ableism affects things, or that other things that people aren't able to do as easily as you. And so it's one of those things that the more experiences that we have and putting ourselves in other people's shoes, or just having our own experiences by putting ourselves out there and going and trying new things and going to new places, is that continues to build, so that we don't have to have. So first of all, we can kind of create those experiences for ourselves, where we can learn that. But then also, so we don't have to wait around for the times where we trip or fall or something's taken away from us. But also being able to identify the things that weren't there in the first place, but being able to just be more open and understanding to empathy, to differences kind of just in general. And so, like I said, empathy, I think, begets empathy in the fact that now you don't just understand what it's like to have that loss of mobility, you're thinking about more things than just that. And so the more that we put ourselves in those positions, it opens up more and more thinking and more thoughts to be able to head things off of the past without having to actually going through each of those specific examples, or have those specific aspects of our life being affected, to actually to get closer to understanding what it's like to be someone in that position.
I really like that. Empathy begets empathy. Yes.
I think
I might
also,
tweet that out, man.
yeah,
All right.
I think it also makes you a little more observant,
Oh yeah.
right? You notice things more. It's like
That's true.
After 10 years in the accessibility space, I can't not see a problem.
That's true. And that's a good thing, because then you can notice a problem, and as designers, our job is to try to fix problems.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that a lot. In the bathroom space, that's one. I mean, that's just one space that we all are required to use. Like, we all have to use public bathrooms, and that's just one space. And there's so many challenges. Ross, you mentioned, how you notice things a lot more like that. And I tell you, I hate the paper towels that require two hands.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's the one, and first of all, you use the hand soap dispenser, the infrared hand soap dispenser to get your soap, so you don't have to touch the hardware. But then you got to stinking use your hand that you just clean to unroll this thing out, and you get like maybe a 2 inches of leeway. And by God, if you don't use both hands, you're getting like a 2-inch square of paper towel. Correct? Like, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous design. And I've actually been in other bathrooms too, where it's like, it's automated hand soap, manual paper towels. It makes no sense. There's no design sense to it. And so this kind of leads me to an area in the book. She touches on architects and architecture. They sometimes spend over 12 years on their education and certifications to be allowed to design for the public. That says a lot about the importance. Yes, human lives, the public public lives are at stake, right? So I think that it's one of those things where it kind of caused me to start thinking about digital design. I mean, they have to go through rigorous certifications, education. Doctors, understandably so, have to go through rigorous education, certification to hold your heart in their hands, quite literally, or your brain.
And
what about
and constantly renew it?
Thank you. And constantly be renewing their education, because things change. That's a requirement. What about design? Should there be a requirement? Should designers be required by some sort of law, because public lives and possibly even safety is at stake? I want to tell you a story that this relates specifically to me. My daughter, my 2-year-old, I mentioned, she's 3 now. She was nearly 2 when this happened. She had some sort of respiratory illness, and she could hardly breathe. It was really, really scary. And so, like, I'm sitting there. I wanted to give her a nap because she was tired, but I was so afraid that she would stop breathing. I slept in my other daughter's bed right next to her. I tried to rest next to her, and I just got to the point where I got to take her to the hospital. Like, she just it wasn't sounding very good. And so, unfortunately, and some of this is on me, I wasn't prepared for this, but I was trying to find the address to the hospital and the phone number on the website of the local phone. I couldn't find it, and I was already in a panic state. And when we're panicking, Eric Meyer and Sarah Wachter-Becher wrote a book called Design for Real Life. He went through a really traumatic experience with his daughter. His daughter sadly passed away from a brain tumor, but there were many trips to ER in unfamiliar places and states that they happened to be in at the time. And he has a lot of testimony about this too. But when you're panicking, your brain already is in a state where it can't process well. So that is an added, really important case for digital designers to make that information as accessible as possible. Think about somebody who's in an emergency situation that needs that phone number, needs that address. Should there be laws around designers be required to design and or a Hippocratic oath? Should there at least be a Hippocratic oath that designers have to agree to before designing for public, for humans? Thoughts?
Well, I'll refrain from commenting on the educational requirements and certification requirements, but the output, there already is law, right? So if you make a website that isn't just for yourself, it's not my personal blog, but it serves a public accommodation. In nearly every country and market of the world, there are already laws. And unfortunately, 99% of the web is inaccessible, and it's illegal to be so.
That's true. It's good to see a lot of progress in that area. And Charles, I think you cited a case on UD Community about a designer, was it for Domino's or Round Table Pizza, that was sued? They were sued for something about not being able to order pizza. Is that?
Yeah, the number of lawsuits is staggering, and the current rate of growth in number of cases in the U.S. is 181% year over year. So the volume of cases continues to grow, but the one that you are referring to is it isn't just the publisher of the site that gets in trouble. It's the designer and the developer and the platform and everything that goes into the making that site public.
That's sobering, right? Like that should be sobering us up here as when we're designing something that especially a lot of people are going to be accessing. Like that's a big deal. Anybody else have thoughts on that?
Yeah, just being, so I went to General Assembly at the end of 2017, and in no way, shape, or form did we cover this subject. And a lot of what I'm learning about it, I'm doing on my own off of Slack and just searches. So I don't know. I feel that education-wise, in terms of UX design, it's just all over the place and it's very hard to navigate and everybody has a different opinion. So I don't know if it could ever get to the place where somebody can be certified, because I know in school, they're not teaching this. You know what I mean? Like I came upon this on my own. So I just wanted to like say that.
Right. There are a couple of certifications on accessibility, but in order for the certification to mean anything, the world basically has to accept that it does.
Right.
It's not a standard. It's not acknowledged by a government or a country or an organization. It's an available piece of paper that you can earn.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. And, you know, I tend to I like to ask important questions. I try to, and I know that one's very provocative. I'll be honest with you. If that became a requirement, I would all of a sudden be really behind in my journey. And I've been at this for nearly 25 years. My highest degree of education, GED.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact. I've been able to do okay, thankfully, because I've taken the growth mindset and really learned as much as I could. And constantly, it's a constant state of learning, not unlike the medical field. There's always something new to learn. Jeffrey Zeldman, when I talked to him a while back, he said something really, really true. He said, listen, if you're bored in this field, you might have chosen the wrong field. You might need to choose a different field if you ever get bored, right?
Or check your pulse.
Or check your pulse. Exactly. So, I mean, I know that's provocative. Like, I know, like, should we be required to maybe even just a Hippocratic oath? I would love to see that. I would love to see a Hippocratic oath that we have to sign before we design for humans.
Yeah, I think there is a great framework for that already. Mike Montiero wrote the Designer's Code of Ethics.
All right.
I consider that required reading.
I would love to see something. We all have certifications, digital certifications of like, yes, I signed this. And therefore, I am taking this very seriously because lives are at stake. I mean, yeah, it's easy to just dismiss, oh, we're just designing for screens. Well, we are, but we're also designing for physical objects now. There's artificial intelligence that's connected to stuff. There's a lot of intersecting that's happening now. We're not just designing web pages. We're not just designing mobile apps. Like there's a lot of intersecting things that humans who aren't like us, who are interacting with, who are depending on these objects. So deciding who designs, like that's kind of that was sort of the instigator of that question. She said it in the book, deciding who designs. I think that's really a good question.
Right.
So I'm curious, there's so many really neat stories in this book about inclusive design and impactful things too. I want to ask, as we kind of start kind of bringing it home for a landing here soon, what story in the book of inclusive design really impacted you the most? I'd love to hear that.
I would say for me, it was the bathroom story, because I had just gone to the movies last weekend, and there was a handicapped stall, but thinking about it, I had no idea how somebody in a wheelchair would even get to it with the size of the door and the space between like the sink and the other stalls. So I think the whole bathroom analogy just made you think, as someone else was saying, because even like the motion sensors are just having to have to pull the paper with the two hands. That's the one that stood out to me the most. And then after that, the playground. Yeah, story.
Awesome.
I like the story of this guy, Robert Moses.
Oh gosh.
Robert,
not Moses. Not
super
Moses.
racist. Yeah. So I have the notes here. It says, in one infamous example, he lowered the height of overpasses to prevent the passage of public buses, the primary mode of transport of low-income and African-American residents. So he shaped the whole city by only doing those key decisions in 2 or 3 points. That it's amazing how 2 changes or one simple decision from one person can affect the whole geographic development of the city.
Yeah, that story really.
And that was on purpose, right? But this happens a lot, like by chance or by not being careful, like.
Yeah, that one stood out to me too, man. That hurt my heart.
Yeah, I think the story that stood out for me was the wall of exclusion with all the video game controllers.
Yeah.
Because there's an abundance of evidence along the way supporting this whole exclusive empire. So not only did the end product carry with it all of its bias and exclude a large audience, but the process of making behind the games and behind the hardware was an exclusive club, right? So video games originated from like really high-tech companies with really smart engineer people building these games, and it took 25, 30 years for the industry behind gaming to become open. So now other people can participate in the design and engineering and creation of games. There's more, there's less exclusion on the other side of the fence. But I think that the thing that just stands out is he has a literal wall of exclusion showing the evolution of this hardware, all excluding people. It's like the writing is literally on the wall.
Yes. Ross?
I think one goes with the controllers too, that, and then also just play in general, because I think that's really what I got the most out of, is that really play reflects everything else. And play is the thing that you think that everyone should have the opportunity to do in every form. And so I've thought a lot about the controllers, because actually before reading the book, I had seen in a video and an article about kind of the universal controller, I think, that Xbox had made, and it was talking about the packaging behind it, and the thought and intuition that went behind actually creating the packaging so that folks of all types would be able to access what was inside the package. So you would be able to open different pieces with your mouth, with your feet, all that kinds of stuff. So really kind of understanding that it's not just the piece in of itself, but I guess the fact that experience is not just that one piece or that one product, it literally is the experience around it. And so what really got me into kind of user experience was that aspect of it's everything from A to Z, from what you hear about it, even before you have it till actually utilizing the product. And so that's what I really appreciated with that, is that really thinking through not just the product in and of itself, but the entire experience surrounding it.
Love that. Yeah, user experience is all about how it works, right? I think Steve Jobs said something like that. It's not how it looks, how it feels, as much as how it works. And I think we can add on for how it works for as many people as possible. I see that Aaron Wong is in the group. Aaron, are you?
Yeah, hi. Sorry
Hey.
I'm late.
No worries. Glad you're here.
I think building off that is the example of the OXO hand peeler.
Oh, yes.
I love that example because I think it really like brought to light that observing somebody use something as small and as like a peeler, like you don't really think about it much. You kind of use it for one task, but the way that they improved it for more people than just someone that was like in that situation. So I really like that. And then a quote that I took away from the book was, "Nothing about us without us." I thought that really was a powerful quote. And I think it really talks to the importance of interviewing real people and getting out there and talking to real people and finding out what would make their experience, from the big things to the little things, what would make it better and easier for them to use.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, I love
was
that.
Probably, kind of touching on that, that was probably the part of the book I really enjoyed the most, was that aspect of the spectrum of folks. Although as far as, designing for touch, those that are a new parent to an arm injury, to only having one arm and, not having an arm. So the exclusiveness. And so that's really, I was picking up with what Aaron was saying, where I really appreciated this aspect of design really being multifaceted and be designing for the person, but also designing for the reason that they want to accomplish something, and then and then spread that design out and throughout. It's something I really got out of the book.
Oh, it's awesome. I'll tell you the story that, and I love every one of those stories. Those all stood out to me too. The one for me that really stood out was the one about Dr. Kipling Williams, who I believe is a professor at Yale, psychologist or psychologist at Yale. And when he was a young man, he recalls a story about just being in the park, sitting in the park with his dog, and a Frisbee falls right in front of him. And sure enough, there was two fellas playing Frisbee, throwing Frisbee to each other. So he did the courtesy of returning the Frisbee back, throwing it back, and then they actually threw it back to him. And then next thing he knows, he's playing Frisbee with these two guys. So he's just he's all of a sudden part of this community, right? And then like a few minutes pass, and all of a sudden these two guys just start passing the Frisbee back to each other and completely ignore him. And that memory, like that hurt him. Like he had a physical pain from that memory. He felt excluded. He felt ostracized. And so as a psychologist, like he thought, like, how can I do some research on this, and how can I kind of duplicate what happened to me in that park that day to kind of study the brain and how our brains react to rejection and being ostracized. And so he came up with this cyberball experiment where he brought subjects into a lab and basically made them feel as though there were two other humans, like on the other side, playing this game with him, throwing a Frisbee to him. And all of a sudden, even though it was just programming, it was all programmatic, but all of a sudden, like just like in his real life scenario, the Frisbee stopped getting thrown to him. And you can see, like, there's actual YouTube. I watched a couple YouTube videos before this call, and you can see like their faces change. You can actually see like they're recording them and they're like having fun playing this dumb little like cyberball game. But all of a sudden, when the Frisbee or the ball didn't get thrown to them, you see their expression like physically change from one of like joy and elation to like actual like sadness and just feeling like an outsider. It was very visceral. And so what he discovered, and this was like really a big takeaway for science and what we can all as designers think about when we're creating when we're designing for other humans, like when somebody feels rejected by our design, they actually sense there's a physical pain, that the area of the brain that detects physical pain lights up when we feel rejected, when we feel ostracized. And so it's like, it was kind of the funny thing was like, can an object reject us? And ironically, yeah, it kind of can. A physical object can reject us, and that can actually produce or generate physical pain inside of us. And another kind of funny like tangent to that was, I was thinking like, well, can a physical object reject us? Well, have you ever seen Castaway? Do you remember when? Do you remember when Wilson got lost?
Yeah.
Do you remember like Tom Hanks, like his physical pain he felt, like that was his only friend on that
Well,
island.
even before that, it wasn't just the pain, is that he threw him away. He got mad at him and
That's
then threw him
true.
away. So it wasn't that just like he went off, like he had that visceral reaction to the inanimate object and then felt that pain of loss as well. So you just literally felt all the range of emotions with that inanimate object.
Right.
Oh,
I
fascinating.
think the more important part of that experiment is the people got mad at a certain degree based on the assumption that the other players in the game were other humans. When they found out that they were computers, they were more mad, they were more upset. So that's the takeaway for us in our industry is people expect technology to be impartial, and it isn't.
Wow. You know, that's interesting. That reminds me of Kranzberg's first law. He said, technology is neither good nor bad, nor is it neutral. It really is. It's an amplifier.
I remember another quote from the book. It says, "You know that people will let you down, but computers aren't supposed to."
Right.
I think that's it's from
Fascinating.
that example.
That's true. And that's the promise that we were given, right?
Yes.
In the 70s, your personal assistant, right? And then we had Clip that help us, right? In Word, like trying to annoy us every time we were trying to get into like a deep work, writing a paper or something. You know, and now we have Siri and we have Alexa and, you know, and things like that. And so it's true. Like we've been groomed from the very beginning that computers are not supposed to let us down ever. But I'll tell you, I observe my wife with technology, and she like says, sometimes I just hate technology, right? It's just like, that's just another reminder that we have a big responsibility, designers, really, really big responsibility. And I think that the world will be a better place when we all take that very, very seriously.
I think we don't just have a responsibility to end users and people that consume passively or actively the content that we create. We have as a responsibility to each other. We have a accountability problem. So I think as a community, we need to behave more like a community and hold each other to account.
Amen. Yeah. And I think it starts from the top. She mentions this in the book. You really do need leadership that cares about this stuff. So design leaders, look at my eyes, look at the whites of my eyes. Please read this book. Implement what you read. Implement this into your team, into your philosophy, into your culture. It really does begin and end with you in a lot of ways, with how you define your culture and how you consider the quote unquote edge cases. I love what Eric Meyer said. He said, when we say edge case, all we were really doing is defining the boundaries of what we care about. So I think this is just a really, just a wonderful call to arms. And my last question for all of us before we close is, I want to know from each of you, how did this book shape your design philosophy going forward? What will you do differently as a designer now having read this book?
Having been in the space for a long time, I don't think it's fundamentally changing anything about my design or my approach, but I think the big takeaway and behavior change is to focus more on hiring and talking to that part of the business that I don't normally engage with to make sure that inclusion is real.
Nice. Emiliano?
Right, same here. I haven't finished the book, so so I think I will start for just knowing that there are different people outside and trying to involve them in the process of development and design. That would be my primary goal. So what can I do today as a product designer in the project I'm working on? Try to continue working more with users and explore these edge cases.
Love it.
So I guess this book makes you more empathetic.
Absolutely agree. Muriel?
I think this book will help me be more of an advocate, because in my internship now, it's for basically online learning for children, and they kind of make it a point to say that they don't really cater to kids with disabilities or autism. And I thought that was very weird, because in my research, most kids that are homeschooled or don't go to school or need that type of education are disabled and autistic. And when I brought that up with the CEO, it was kind of like, oh, we can't worry about that now, so on and so forth. So I feel like after reading this, I should be more of an advocate if I know that I have a point, because I kind of just let that go because I was just the intern. So, but now I feel that there are more people out there like me that are kind of fighting the fight, and it kind of has to start with you to get the message out there. So I will try to do that more.
And bring other advocates with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Love that, Muriel. Ross?
Yeah, so for me, I think it's really thinking critically about what are the things that I'm missing or not diving into or even shying away from. I think because really one of the biggest quotes that really stuck with me is on page 85, where it says how feedback is collective often reflects the preferences of the team that builds the product. And so it's that aspect of, sometimes not asking the right questions is in and of itself, being exclusive. So, where am I pulling the wool over my eyes? What questions am I not asking? What am I not diving into? And I think that what's at risk is a quote that I like on page 54, where it says, if writing stories required a keyboard, computer screen, and fluency in English, the only stories we'd read would be from people who match these requirements. And so really trying to think about what is I'm shying away from, because what richness of experience am I robbing of myself and other people? Don't want, I really appreciate the gradation that there is in the world and all the different experiences, and don't want to sterilize that and rob people of being able to really learn from other people. So I think that's really what I'm taking away, is really where those areas I can dive in that might be a little uncomfortable, but really need to be explored and really thought about critically because of all that's really at stake for it.
So good, man. Erin?
I think what I'm taking away from this book is just having way more empathy for the spectrum of abilities. I think a lot of people tend to think that designing for people with disabilities is something extra and it's on top of the work that they're already doing. But I think the spectrum really showed that disabilities or abilities come in all types and forms and degrees. So it's not extra, it's just something that we should be doing. So I think I think that all the examples in this book would be really helpful for helping me, like Muriel said, like advocate for including this design earlier and better into the work process.
Yes. Oh man.
There's a great way to frame some of those arguments and conversations about visual design in particular being more work, and that is put text on a page, on a web page, and it's accessible by default. You add some layer of design to it, and then it's broken. So it's not more work. In most cases, it's less. That's
fun. That's fascinating. It's sort of like the way the web started. What was it? It was text. It was text on a blank background, and it was a way to communicate, and it was responsive.
Yeah.
The original web was responsive web design.
It's responsive by default and accessible by default.
And then we added design to it.
And we had great animated GIFs.
Yes. Lest we forget, my first web page had about 20 animated GIFs. It was incredible. And it was on America Online. So for me, like, I think just as we wrap here, I think for me, in agreement with everything y'all just shared, I think it's just, I want to design for the world I want my kids to inherit, and their kids and their kids. I think it's like thinking beyond ourselves, thinking beyond just right now, which is really hard for a lot of us because there's so many things vying for our attention right now. We live in probably the most distracted time we've ever experienced I think in the human existence. For better or worse, I think I have arguments that it's worse in some ways. But I feel like we need to kind of step away. And I don't know, how many of you have kids in here? Anybody have? Well, when you have kids, it's just kind of like my injury, like how it made me really get out of my what I knew at the time. It made me go, wow, this is a different perspective than I had before. You just start to kind of go, wow, I'm going to leave this earth eventually, and whoever's here after me will inherit whatever I've put into it. So I guess it's kind of like a garden, right? It's like and I look at the same way at my marriage. Like I'm being married 20 years and because it's like a garden. Like I get what I put into it. I get out of it what I put into it. And so I feel like we should kind of shift our lens of how we design and considering beyond ourselves, beyond our temporary abilities, suspending our ability bias, and thinking about the future generations that will be here, inheriting what we've created. So that's really, for me, that was kind of what this will do. I know that's really blue sky in a lot of ways, but I really want to try to get that to a more granular level with whatever I do, even if it's adding an alt tag to an image in an HTML email that I designed. So there we have it. Incredible book, incredible conversation, you all. This was really, really rich. So good. Thank you all for being here. I will share this if I have everybody's permission. Is everybody okay with that?
Call my agent.
Sure.
Call your agent. I can't pay you, but I can make you famous. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, thank you all so much. And thanks for being a part of User Defenders community. Anybody listening who wants to join, you can do that at community.userdefenders.com. That's where we have this book club. That's really what started this engagement and this conversation today. Was we chose the very first book was Mismatch. I'm so glad we did. It's almost like, where can we go from here? But I know there's a lot of really good books out there, so we'll be choosing another book and reading it and doing this again. So if you want to be a part of it, please join us at community.userdefenders.com. Thanks so much again, everybody. And I'm inspired. Like I already was inspired before this. I'm even more now after this conversation. And I just want to say, as always, fight on, my friends.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right on.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Take care. We'll see you on the community.
Bye, guys.
All right.
Bye now.